Well,
I give
thank
this
you
back
for
to
that
Dhamma-chan.
very pleasant introduction. So I want to start right at the beginning. Guhyaloka was purchased in 1986, actually, by money that Bhante had been given for his 60th birthday. So he invested all of that money in Guhyaloka. And it was originally, sorry, I'm going to have to contradict you a bit, Dharma Chanda. It has 5 purposes, not just one. So it was set up for 5 particular reasons. The first was, it was originally meant to be a winter retreat for Bhante himself. He was going to spend his winters there in the warmth of a Spanish winter. And when he was living there, he was going to be running small retreats for 4 or 5 people to come out to Guhyaloka and do some study with him for a week or 2. And in fact, there was a building that's now used for solitaries, Jnana Kadka, that was built for that particular purpose. So it's going to be a place for Bhante in the winter with small retreats where he would just go through a text with people. That never really worked because it was, in fact, the winters could sometimes be quite severe there. And so it didn't really work out for him in that way. The second purpose was the venue for ordination retreats. These had previously been held in rented accommodation in Tuscany. But Bhante wanted our own permanent place for the ordination of men, and later we got a place for the ordination of women as well. And he wanted it to be 4 months in a wild and challenging environment away from one's normal world. So the idea was that you'd leave your normal world, you go to something completely different. He had an idea actually about an ordination process that he mentioned to a few of us once. We were discussing what kind of process should be set up to ordain people into the Western Buddhist order, as it then was. And what he suggested was that people, the men, this was for men particularly, should be flown out to Brazil, taken up the Amazon, and dropped in the jungle. If they got back alive, we'd ordain them. So I think that expressed a certain spirit of what he thought needed to happen. The men needed to be taken away entirely from their normal world and away for a period of time so that they could really experience themselves very deeply and what they were communicating them to. He wanted the length to be increased to 6 months, actually, from 4 months to 6 months. Unfortunately, Brexit rather kiboshed that, and it's now got pulled back to just under 3 months, which is very sad. The retreat centre itself was constructed very, very cheaply, and I mean cheaply. The Yeso huts, which passed by just now, were built from onion sacks filled with dirt and then piled upon each other. And these have only this year been taken, well, they haven't even been taken down actually. It's just that the onion sacks and the dirt have been removed and replaced by good solid concrete blocks. So this is the first stage of the development of Guhyaloka, is to not knock down and replace, which I'm really pleased about, but to rebuild these Yeso huts, which are very sort of characteristic of Guhyaloka. Anyway, yes, so they were built cheaply. Oh, the other buildings were built out of pallets with plastic stuck over them. And one of those pallet huts still exists. It's still used as a storage place, which isn't bad after how many years is that? I don't know, 40 years, something like that. So anyway, well-constructed pallet Yeso huts. But they do need to be replaced, they really do. And as I say, the Yeso huts have been replaced very well. So the third purpose of Guhyaloka was a location for a vihara. The vihara meant, in this case, a small community, 4 or 5 six people maybe, dedicated to spiritual practice. They would live there in huts, yurts and tents. So again, very, very kind of crudely accommodated. And they would stay there for many years. The men there at the beginning were discussing with Bhante, well, what should they do? What were going to be the rules of this vihara? How much meditation, how much study, how much puja, all of these sorts of things. And Bhante said, no, there's only one rule. The one rule is you don't leave. You stay here. Stay here all the time. So the people in the vihara there never left the place. Some people were there for 5-6 years. And the idea being that you really went away, you really went forth from the world, and you really practiced and went more and more deeply into yourself, understood yourself, the workings of your mind and so on. The fourth purpose of Guhyaloka was to provide facilities for solitary retreats. To be like the vihara, but just by yourself, not actually in a community. And this would have been for shorter times. So it would be a month, 3 months, sometimes 6 months. But for shorter periods of time, people would go there for solitaries. So various huts were built, and later on we acquired another property further up the Guhyaloka Valley, which is very beautiful, very isolated, and that is sort of for longer 6-month solitaries. And the fifth reason was for the support community. There would be a community of men there who would live there and would support all of these other activities, would build the buildings and so on, provide the food, bring people in and out of the property and so on. And there has always been a support community there, usually of sort of 4, 5, 6 people mainly they used to be from Britain, but now since Brexit, there's very few Britons there because they are not allowed to go and live there. So we've got more Germans, we've got Venezuelans, we've got Spanish, and so on, Dutch, Belgium. So it's becoming very much an international community. Spanish is now the common language. For many, many years it was English, but in the last year it's gradually transformed over to Spanish. So that's the kind of the purpose, if you like, of Guhyaloka, those 5 things. Personal retreats for Bhante, which didn't work. Venue for the ordination retreats. Location for a vihara, which we don't actually have at the moment, but Guhyaloka is something of that. Facilities for solitary retreats, which we have very much and are very much used. And of course the support community, which is there and active. So now I was meant to say something about what Guhyaloka is like. It's very difficult to say what happens at Guhyaloka. It's a wild place. It's a bit dangerous. I mean, there are snakes, scorpions, there are wild pigs, although they're not dangerous. The rocks are the main danger. The sharp rocks. People fall over and hurt themselves. People fall off cliffs and hurt themselves. So this happens. So it's a dangerous place. It's a place where you go where there's no guarantee of all the kind of security and safety of home. Living is a bit more difficult. There can be big storms with enormous rainfalls. It can be really cold. You can feel quite miserable. Though, until recently, there was not much heating there. So it was a challenging place. It's beautiful though. When the sun comes out and it's blue and the sky and the weather is like nice 25, 26 degrees, just sort of lovely, gorgeous, lovely weather. So there's the beautiful mountains, there's all the cliffs, there's trees, there's animals, there's beautiful flowers in the spring, there's blue skies, and there's storms, which are kind of very exhilarating. So that's what the place is. Beautiful, wild, solitary, isolated. What happens when you go there happens internally. It's very much a place that stimulates the internal life, the inner life. And this is really what happens. So when you come back, I mean, I've just come back from 3 months at Guhyaloka, and people say, what happened? Well, Nothing, actually. You know, we had some nice food. We went for a couple of walks. There was lots of goats and pigs, and you know, but that's about it, really. Nothing happens. In a way, it's incredibly boring, but that is really good. That means you think, okay, there's nothing else to do. I'm going to meditate, and so you really put your effort into your meditation and to communication with the other people there. When someone says, I love Guhyaloka, what they really mean is I love what I experience when I go to Guhyaloka. It's an inner experience. You can't really talk about it. Photos tell you something, but they don't tell you a lot. It's because it all happens inside. Quite often when people arrive, as we heard, they arrive, they've travelled, they've come to this place, and they suddenly feel a kind of relaxation. I call it clunking down. What happens with me is after I've been through there for a few hours, I feel this kind of shudder. And all of a sudden, I feel quiet, relaxed, and I feel I'm in my place. I've come to my real home, which is a kind of inner state of tranquility. So what I thought I would do, please tell me when my time's getting short, is just sort of talk about a few of the things that I've experienced over the last 35 years in a way to give you perhaps a taste of what it can be like, what the inner experience of Guhyaloka is. I first went there in 1992, over 35 years ago. We decided to have a retreat. There was 5 old friends, Subhuti, Lokamitra, Nagabodhi, Devamitra, and myself. We decided to go there for a 10-week retreat. After 5 weeks, we were joined by another 7 or 8 people. And we were the kind, what we were called? We were called the senior and responsible order members. So we were kind of order members who were taking leadership, I won't say roles, but we were leading the movement in different places and different areas. And we lived together, at least the 5 of us lived together there for those 10 weeks. I was one of the happiest times of my life. Oh God, it actually moves me to think of it. It was a very happy time. I loved being there. And what happened was I got in touch with what I was really doing with my spiritual life. You know, I'd been in America for 12 years by that time, and I'd been very busy, you know, I mean, earning money to set up the centre, and then setting it up, and then again earning more money to put into the centre, building it all, organising retreats, travelling around doing classes and retreats, eventually all over the country. So it was a very active life. I was building the movement. I was building contacts and sort of providing the kind of nuts and bolts, the bricks and the kind of the hardware of the movement. And although I kept in touch with my sort of inner motivation, when I went to Guhyaloka, I really found it again. I really found what it was that was moving me into the spiritual life. It was a deeper practice through meditation, through the ritual that we did, through study, and also through friendship, through really connecting again with my old friends. It was kind of back to basics. You know, inner experience of meditation, ritual, study, friendship. And I thought, no, this is what I'm interested in. This is what I want to do. So when I go back to the States, I'm not going to put so much in, I'm going to put as little energy as I can into creating the nuts and bolts. I'll let the newer people do that. You know, they can come along, they can do their apprenticeship, they can do their bit, they can help build the nuts and bolts. What I want to do is communicate the depth of my practice and build friendships. In other words, what I want to do is build the order, not so much the movement. I'll leave the movement to do its own stuff, but I want to build the order. I want to build those connections which make up the order. Now that to me was quite an insight and a clarification of what I wanted to do. So when I went back to the States, that's what I did. So from 93 onwards, I was much more concerned with building my personal relationships with people, encouraging people to meditate, study, those sorts of things, rather than sort of rushing around building the movement. So that's the first thing that Guhyaloka gave me, which was a really big thing. Yeah, and I needed something like Guhyaloka. I needed to go away from what I was doing in order to be able to see what I was doing. You know the old, tree and woods quotation. You can't see the woods for the trees or something. I can't remember what it is, but you know what I mean. It's sort of you need to go away in order to really understand what it is that's going on in your life, and that for me is really what Guhyaloka provides. In 1999, I went to support and then lead a number of 4-month ordination retreats. So I was on these retreats. And certain things came out of them. I'm just going to quickly note a few of those. The first was on the very first retreat I went on, where I ordained Vardika. I reacted to the program. We had this program, you get up, you meditate, you have breakfast, you do some study, you do some more meditation, lunch, afternoon, you have a little nap, more meditation, more meals, and you do puja in the evening. It was all packed with this, there wasn't a moment to myself anywhere. So I started to react against it. And I was saying to myself, well, okay, what do you want to do with your, what is it that you're missing? And I said to myself, well, I want to meditate, I want to study, I want to meet my friends, and then I suddenly realized, well, actually, that's exactly what the program was providing with me. And it was organizing it all for me in this incredible way. And all of a sudden, my whole attitude towards schedules on retreat changed. They were a gift, not an imposition. And I have to admit that these days I find it very difficult to meditate, study, and see my friends if I don't have that kind of schedule. Now in Ledbury, I'm having to invent ways to recreate those sort of schedules for myself. Anyway, that was an insight, and again, that was something that came out of life at Guhyaloka. The next thing was that I was very happy there. I was just utterly delighted. Not only was I delighted and happy, I felt that I was doing something useful. I was helping men come into the order. A few years previously, when I'd been in, let's say soon after I was ordained, I went to live in Cornwall. And I had, again, 3 very, very happy years living in Cornwall. Beautiful place, by myself a lot of the time. I loved it. Then I went to America, and I was working really hard for 17 years. And quite frankly, I wasn't very happy, but I felt really fulfilled. I was doing something really valuable, and I felt that, and that was what kept me going. I'd left Cornwall, even though I was really happy there, because I didn't feel I was contributing anything to life, to the world. I was just sort of living a happy life. And that was great for me, but it didn't seem to benefit anyone else. Anyway, I remember talking to Bhante about this. I said, look, in Bhante, I was happy, but unfulfilled. In America, I was fulfilled, but unhappy. He said, well, maybe sometime you'll find somewhere where you're both happy and fulfilled. And sure enough, when I turned up at Guhyaloka, that's what I found. I found that everything was perfect there. So I've been incredibly grateful for that. I remember at one time in about the 2000s, early 2000s, I was on retreat, and a lot of people were questioning their relationship with Bhante for various reasons. I didn't have any questions about my relationship with him, but I thought, okay, I'll think about it. What does Bhante mean to me? What part does he play in my life? And I reflected on it quite deeply. And what I came to the conclusion in the end was that I was very happy with my life. And I think Bhante had actually given it to me. Do you know, he'd given me the courage to follow my inspiration. I wouldn't have done it without him. And he'd given me support to do that. He'd be given me support to deepen my spiritual experience, which is something I'd had before I met him, but I just didn't take it seriously. But he kind of, as it were, nurtured that spiritual side and enabled me to live it in my life in various ways. So my overall relationship to him was one of intense gratitude. Yeah, he'd given me my life. I was very happy with it. And what better gift can anyone ever give you? So I remember thinking that at Guhyaloka in the early 2000s. And again, one had the space to be able to do that. And also for me, the actual Guhyaloka experience of living there and how it satisfied me perfectly. One other little thing I'd say about that period. You know, spiritual life's a bit odd, isn't it? One day, walking back from the loo, I'd just been to the toilet, to the composting toilet. I was walking back to my hut, and I just thought, you know, I don't actually want anything. And it was blissful. And I realized that not wanting anything was blissful. It wasn't that if you didn't want anything, you could be blissful. It was the very fact of not wanting anything, the experience of not wanting anything, of being free from any kind of grasping, any kind of reaching out, which was blissful itself. So that again was, you know, an experience that I owed to that little path from the toilets down to my hut. And whenever I walk by there these days, I still think of that experience. Okay, in 2004, I moved into the community and became chairman. This was a conscious practice of renunciation. Previously, I'd been living at Guhyaloka, and I'd still been going out to the States for 3 or 4 months a year. Now, I think there are various spiritual drives, let's say. There are various drives that move us in our spiritual life. And I think each of us has a particular one, a particular individual one. Now, it might be, for example, that you want to benefit all sentient beings, help all sentient beings in some way. So you could say that compassion is your main drive. It might be that you feel a bit grubby and you want to purify yourself. You want to experience spiritual purity. It might be that you want to understand the nature of reality. You know, you want to penetrate into reality with rational thought. It might be, I'm trying to think of another one, but anyway, those three are at least. In my case, it was freedom. What I wanted was freedom. I wanted a profound sense of freedom. I'd had this when I was younger, when I used to go hiking with just a backpack, or when I was hitchhiking around Europe. I used to have this sort of just sense of freedom. And I knew that freedom was what I wanted. Now, freedom has been I now know that freedom is what has driven me through the whole of my spiritual life, a desire for freedom. That's why I consider myself a disciple of Vajrayogini, because she in a way represents that blissful experience of freedom, of not being connected, attached to anything. Now, back in around 2000 or so, I kind of renounced women. Before 2000, women had played a really important part in my life. But around 2000, I won't go into details, Vodka told me not to, but I got dumped, basically, and I was really upset. But I also thought, actually, I'm kind of free. I can do what I want now. I don't have to phone, I don't have to write letters, I can just do whatever. So I experienced the freedom from something which I'd very much been strongly attached to. And I thought, no, I'll pursue this. I'll pursue this freedom. Now, going to Guhyaloka was a quite conscious attempt to pursue that. I knew that if I lived at Guhyaloka, I wasn't going to get myself a new lady friend. It wasn't going to happen. Some pretty nice goats up there, but nothing sort of that you'd sort of could satisfy that desire. So that was quite conscious, and I did that quite specifically. But there was another renunciation, which in fact, with me, was even deeper than that. And that was the attachment to status. When I'd been in the States, I was the main man. Even before I'd gone to the States, I was one of the senior and responsible order members. Yeah? When I was at Padmaloka, I had status. But going to Guhyaloka, I knew that I would gradually lose that status. I wouldn't be known as a kind of, as one of the speakers or one of the meditation teachers or someone that people would come and talk to about their spiritual life. I would lose all of that. And I really didn't want to lose it. It was definitely a renunciation. However, I decided I was going to do that. So those two big things, status and women, were what I was working on when I first went to Guhyaloka. And again, going away from the world, being up in the mountains, experiencing the bliss of freedom, that was a good replacement for both of those. And so again, it was Guhyaloka that provided me with the context in which I could experience that depth of spiritual experience, which would enable me to let go of those attachments. There's lesser attachments which Guhyaloka can help you free yourself of. Comfort, for example. I must admit, now that I live in Ledbury, I can turn on the taps and I can have as much water as I like, and I can have a hot shower whenever I want to. I can turn electricity on and off. I've got an internet connection. I can watch the TV. There's all of these comforts, which are okay, but they're not as good as Vajrayogini. They're not as good as freedom. But they're very seductive. They can. I really have to fight against that, getting absorbed into that. So dependence on water, electricity, heat, air conditioning, special food, all of those things you have to let go of when you go to Guhyaloka. Distracting entertainment. Yeah. TV, radio, films, newspapers, phones, computers, and nowadays, smartphones, all of those things. Social media, podcasts, news sites. None of those can you experience now at Guhyaloka. Now I have a confession here. When I was living there, I did introduce DVDs, and it was a mistake. Yeah, because DVDs are now part of the community ethos. Once a week they watch a DVD. That's decadence. That's the low life, crept into Guhyaloka. I am joking. So I think of Guhyaloka, Uttaraloka as a centre specialising in renunciation. Yeah, it's a place where you go to let go of all of your habitual attachments, and what you discover is not, boredom, whatever, pain. What you discover is bliss, the freedom from all of that junk in your mind. It's really, really liberating. And frankly, I don't think you can do that to that degree anywhere else. Yeah, you really do need to go right away from your world in order to shake it all off. It's very hard to do if you're still engaged with worldly activities. That's my experience anyway. So in the 2000s, we ran a number of 3-month retreats for order members, and these proved to be very successful. So we decided that if possible, we would find somewhere where we could have longer retreats, 3 months, 6 months, a year, possibly even 3-year long retreats. And we started thinking about a place. Now, at the end of the 1999 ordination course, Vajrabandhu, Ratnavua and I walked down to where we got the taxis, the Refugio it's called. And we walked past these two houses, little huts. And we were saying to each other, wow, this would make a retreat centre on the side of a mountain, very different from Guhyaloka, which is in a canyon, on the side of a mountain, looking over forest and mountains, nothing else. Anyway, it was a dream, and we just carried on, and as you do. Anyway, 11 years later, Vajrabandhu again was walking past there, and he noticed that one of the houses was for sale. So he came back to Guhyaloka, we went over, we had a look at it, and a week later we owned it. I've never spent so much money and so quickly. And anyway, we bought one of the little huts. A year later, the other little place became available, and we bought that as well. That took about 9 months to buy. But, and then Bodhidharma, with a local builder, rebuilt, renovated, changed the whole place into making a retreat centre for 5 people, up to 3 months at a time. And that we've had, anyway, I'll come back to that. No, I'll tell you about that now. So we got those, we built that up. There was 3 one-year retreats run there. But then we were finding it quite difficult to get people to do one-year retreats. Bodhidharma had left. I went there to be caretaker, look after the place and so on. So I decided to run 2 3-month retreats a year instead of the 1 year month. And those have now been going since 2018. Every year there's been 2 retreats, but on a couple of them there's only been me there. So I've managed to get 3 months solitaries in. So, but that's what's happening at Guhyaloka. So those are kind of my experiences, really, of what Guhyaloka has meant to me. Everybody has their own. Just one quick. Sometimes it's not what you expect. I know one man who went out to Guhyaloka for 3 months, planning to think about becoming the chairman of a particular centre. And during the course of the retreat, he decided not to be chairman, but to leave and get married. Yeah. So, but the thing is, he went deeply into himself, and he really figured out what he wanted to do. He wasn't just living out the theory. He was looking at what his actual experience was. And that, I think, is what Guhyaloka offers. It offers the opportunity to put the theory aside and just find out what you're actually experiencing spiritually. And that, of course, is incredibly valuable. Now, in 2018, there was a strong lobby developing, mainly from Padmaloka and the LBC, for improvements of the facilities at Guhyaloka. The men coming on the ordination course were getting older, unused to the rigours of Guhyaloka. And I must say, against some resistance from some of us crusty old timers, the idea gradually took hold, and the idea of improving the facilities at Guhyaloka took hold. And gradually over the years there have been various plans and so on, and people have been talking about trying to raise money and so on. But now that's actually happening. The place, I think, is being improved but not spoiled. Yeah, it's still got its old magic, but it's just being made a bit better. Many years ago, I once tried to improve the ethos of not the ethos, the kind of atmosphere of Guhyaloka by turning it into a more Zen-like quality, sort of neat and tidy and clean. But it didn't happen. It stayed messy and kind of grubby, and and then some people said to me, well, look, when people come here, what they want to do is they want to camp, but in stone tents. So the whole idea of keep it really simple, but also let the men come there and be boys. That's basically one of the things. Let them contact their boyish exuberance and enjoyability. So that is happening. The Yeso huts, as I've said, which were a characteristic were going to be replaced with something more modern. But the architect that we've got, who's really good, he said, no, this is what you want here. We'll make them into real buildings instead of, onion sacks and dirt. And they've done a fantastic job, I must say. Really, really good. I'm really impressed with what's happened. And the fundraising is going ahead, slowly, but it's going ahead sufficiently to enable things to be changed. There's more water there now, there's more electricity, and I think it's, but it's still the same Guhyaloka. So there is now a thriving community, as I said, an international community. Spanish is the community language. They run various retreats, and especially the ordination retreat, which is for up to 3 months each year. It enables men to come and live in that environment and experience themselves more deeply. That's all it does, nothing more than that. It's beautiful, really beautiful. It's peaceful. It's isolated. It's challenging, and it's spacious. And so the like-minded men come, they can enjoy each other, they can enjoy community, developing themselves on that sort of basis. So, let's hope Guhyaloka continues. It's essential, I think. I think it's an essential part of our movement, much more than anybody realizes. Without Guhyaloka, I think we'd descend into churches. Guhyaloka is the place where you can go to get a real taste of something which is very different from ordinary kind of Buddhist religious life.
Let's show your pictures.
Oh, yeah. Okay, let's just run through them quickly.
Bear with me.
I'm aware of time.
Okay.
So this is Guhyaloka. The building you see on the right is the main building, and there's another one which you can just see right on the left. So, okay.
No, okay.
That's the main building. Shrine room on the top, kitchen, sitting room, and my room. And then there's another little place here with 2 bedrooms, and there are 2 huts which you can't see. This is the view from my room, from the sitting area, from the general kind of congregation area. Not a house, just trees and this 4,000 feet mountain. This is the shrine room. This is one of the huts. That's the shrine room. This is one of the neighbours. That's 3 other neighbours. That's the olives which we harvest every year. That's the figs which we eat in the summer.
That's it.
And that's it.
Yeah.
So there we are.